Hi, good morning, everyone. Thank you for joining us. We're so excited to meet you and welcome you to the Grinnell. One thing that we just want to kind of provide you is that we will be recording this session to make available to those that are unavailable to attend. We know that you might have individual questions, but we want to be mindful of your privacy. So feel free to reach out to us individually, either through the chat, and we will make sure that we can answer those individually. My name is JC Lopez. I'm the Vice President for Student Affairs, and I am fortunate to be with some great colleagues here that'll be providing a quick overview of the processes and information for you during your transition. So I will kick it over to Autumn.
Perfect. Thanks, JC. Hi, everyone. As JC said, my name's Autumn. I'm the Associate Chief Diversity Officer for Disability Resources. So I'm going to be giving you an overview today and then answering questions related to accessibility and disability resources at Grinnell. Some of my colleagues have joined or will be joining us. And so we'll do a round of introductions of folks when we get to the Q&A section after I get through the slides. And so the slide that you're seeing on your screen right now is of Steiner Hall, which is where we are located on Grinnell's campus. For those of you who have visited the campus, you may have seen this building on your tour or things like that. For those of you who haven't already been on campus, and we will welcome you in August, wanted to give you sort of a preview of the building where you can find anyone from our team. So once again, Steiner Hall, we take up most of the first floor. The best way to reach us this summer is going to be by email, access@grinnell.edu. The whole team is checking that email. And so if you have questions at any point, that's going to be a great way to set up a meeting with us, to get connected, to get additional assistance with anything that we're going to talk about today. So I want to just give you a moment to sort of meet the staff visually. So there's myself, Autumn Wilke. As I said, I'm the Associate Chief Diversity Officer for Accessibility and Disability Resources. Emily Fenner is the Neurodiversity Support Specialist on campus. So this is me. You can kind of see my arrow. Emily, who works really closely one-on-one, particularly with first-year students as they are transitioning to Grinnell, doing some of that skills coaching, sort of helping with that transitional support. Stacy Turley is our operations coordinator in disability resources. She helps a lot with things related to accommodated exams, helps make sure that accommodation letters go out smoothly for people, and really is a great resource for anything that might be a question about our systems or processes. And then Jay, who I know was able to join us today, is the coordinator of student disability resources. For those of you who may have already been in touch with our office, many of you may already be connected with or working with Jay, as they're sort of the first point of contact in the spring for many families and students as they're getting ready to begin exploring accommodations at Grinnell. So I wanted to share a little bit about what we do. There's a number of different things that our office does, and so I wanted to give sort of a broad overview of those before I dive more specifically into accommodations, which is likely what many folks have more specific questions about. So obviously our office helps coordinate accommodations for students with disabilities. That includes accommodations for the residential environment, so things related to the residence halls where you're going to live, be that things like being on a first floor, having access to an elevator, a variety of different things that we can help with in that regard. We also do academic accommodations, so working with you and your individual faculty, putting supports in place for the classroom, for exams, for registration, really kind of looking at the whole academic picture. We provide and work closely with our partners in the dining hall, in dining services, for those who might have severe food allergies or other dietary restrictions that are related to a health condition. And then for those of you who might be planning to work on campus, if you have accommodations that you might need in your on-campus employment, that is also something that our office can help navigate for you and with you as you work with your supervisor and your hiring department. We also, as I said, do some of that skills coaching. Emily does a lot of this work. Emily hosts an accountability group, which gets together this semester, they were getting together weekly and spending some time really doing things like body doubling, accountability, setting goals with each other, and just having some dedicated work time. She also does some one-on-one work with individuals around goal setting, particularly as it relates to executive functioning. That could relate to academics, but she also works with students who are really trying to figure out what does it look like to transition to living independently. How do I manage academics and find the schedule for doing my laundry and all of the other things that I might need to do. And then really thinking with individuals about how do you create social connections at Grinnell. She primarily works with students who identify as neurodivergent, which could include students on the autism spectrum, individuals with ADHD, really a pretty wide range of diagnoses. And those are kind of the three big areas that she works with students on. Every semester, we hire students. So many students will work for our office over their time at Grinnell. The two positions that I know we will have some students that we are going to be hiring for in the fall, which first years would be eligible for, is our user expert program, which conducts audits of existing spaces and programs on campus from an accessibility lens. And then our Disability Cultural Center interns, we're going to be adding a first year or second year to that. Which is a great transition into programming. We have the Disability Cultural Center, which is largely run by the student interns in terms of the programmatic offerings that are coming out of that space. That space is a place where individuals can get together to talk about disability, to have a space to come together and read about disability, celebrate a variety of different things. That's within Steiner as well. We also spend some time advising disability student organizations. Currently, there's an organization called the Disability Cultural Association, DCA is the acronym, which students can join, which is a student-run student org. And they often meet within our space and work closely with us as they're sort of thinking about programmatic offerings. This last year, we rolled out something called Identity, which the DCC interns hosted on an ongoing and regular basis, which was really just an opportunity to come together, have some tea or other warm beverage of your choice, and really talk about things related to accessibility, experiences about disability on campus. Really, the topics were kind of pretty free flowing based on who attended in any given week. And then we have begun hosting this year and will continue to host a disability film festival each year in terms of some programmatic offerings. We do a lot of things related to campus planning. This is primarily in my role and some of the work that the user experts do, but doing audits of spaces, looking at building plan reviews, sort of thinking about the future of our campus, looking at policy development from an accessibility lens. And then some of the work that Jay does as you sort of move through your time at Grinnell. Jay will often work really closely with students who are thinking about how do I navigate off-campus study and accommodations through another program. Not all of those accommodations are going to be things that happen through Grinnell College. And so how do you sort of navigate that with a different partner and things like that? What does it look like to request accommodations for the GRE, MCAT, LSAT, and then navigating specific access issues? If you're encountering a barrier, how might we be able to help sort of navigate that or resolve that for you? And then doing a lot of work for individuals who want it, talking about what does it mean to be a disabled student or have a disability at Grinnell. Is that identity something that you're wanting to explore and find community around? So those are the things that we do. Diving into the accommodation process, because I know that this is where many of you are at right now, is wanting to know what does that process look like? Where are you at in that process? And how do you get started if you haven't already connected with us? And so we created this visual this last year to really kind of show the progression of ways that you work through the accommodation process with our office. And the first step is connecting with us, which being on this webinar or this session is a great way to get some of that connection started, and I'm going to talk through how to do that in a more formal way if you haven't already. But connect with us. We'll give you a lot of resources, help talk you through the next steps of how we're going to work with you on accommodations and exploring what might make sense for you here at Grinnell. Most of that exploration happens in what we call our navigation appointment. This is where we'll meet with you one-on-one or with you and your supporters, your family, and really talk through what are the barriers that you're experiencing, what are things that have been helpful for you in the past, what sorts of things are you concerned about as you transition to Grinnell, and really kind of start to build an individualized plan for you about what sorts of supports might be helpful and that we want to put into that accommodation plan. During that navigation stage or at the end of that navigation stage, you'll also actually submit in writing to us on a fairly simple form some of that same stuff that we talk about in person during the navigation around what are you feeling like would be helpful for you, what accommodations are you requesting, just so that we make sure that we are not missing something from our notes or things like that, and have direct info from you about what it is that you feel like would be helpful for you. This is also where you'll typically submit supplemental information. This could be your 504 plan or IEP from high school. This could be documentation from your medical providers about the types of accommodations or impacts that we want to be addressing. This could be additional supplemental information. Sometimes it might be a copy of information that you submitted to the Access Board for ACT or SAT and what accommodations you were approved for there. It might be a supplemental statement from you or your family or your teachers about some of the ways that your disability has impacted academics or things like that. Really trying to pull together some comprehensive information that will help us begin to review all of that and draft a plan for you that's sort of thinking about the broad life cycle of your time at Grinnell. So thinking about those academics, the dining experience, the residential experience, and sort of looking at what sorts of things are going to be helpful for you. We then come back together for an accommodation plan meeting, which is really where we finalize and begin to implement your accommodations. So we'll go over the pieces from that draft. What sorts of things did we hear from you was helpful? What did we see in your documentation? Are there additional things that made us think of that we want to talk with you about or suggest might be helpful for you? Oftentimes, this might be things related to for example, the residential environment. If you attended a high school that wasn't a residential high school, which many of you probably did, then this might be the first time that you're needing to request accommodations or thinking about accommodations for that living environment and what might be needed there. And then once we implement those accommodations, we stay in close contact with you. We have ongoing contact with individuals via email, via meetings, in sort of what we consider to be the sustaining portion of the process. So that's really those steps kind of in a nutshell. To go a little bit more in depth, so connecting with us. What this means for you as students, if you haven't already, you want to complete the Connect with Us form online. The website that you go to is access.grinnell.edu, which should be fairly easy to remember, and that you'll be interacting with quite a bit during your time here at Grinnell. Over the summer, if you need help completing that form, you're having trouble accessing it, you're not sure what we're asking, feel free to reach out to us. Email us at access.grinnell or access@grinnell.edu, and we are happy to set up a meeting and fill that out with you, get you really into that system. We will respond to that Connect with Us, that sort of form that you submit, and invite you to schedule an individually tailored meeting that might be virtual or in person, depending on where you are in the world. Many of you, it's probably going to be virtual, whether that be a video or a phone call, to have that navigation meeting with a member of our team. Again, once we get to the navigation point, you're going to meet with one of us to discuss supports. Some of the things we might talk about in that navigation meeting would be, what are the sources of information or documentation of your disability that you have access to? What might you not have access to, and how might we be able to build sort of that profile? What barriers have you encountered or do you anticipate encountering? And then what supports, again, have you found useful in the past? And this is really where then we begin to get ready for that review and draft stage. Again, you would submit the accommodation request form and any supporting information. All of this will happen at that accommodation portal or in that accommodation portal, which again is access.grinnell.edu. We will review all of that, and then we'll get in touch with you about what are the next steps. We may refer you to other campus supports in addition to our office. We might respond back with some additional questions or things that would be helpful for us to have in terms of additional information. Or we may reach out and say, we think we have a plan. Let's go ahead and get a meeting scheduled to create that access plan for you. And then during that, that's really where we'll finalize that plan. And we will continue to stay in touch with you because you haven't registered yet about what it looks like to send those as you get registered in August, to send those courses and accommodation letters to your faculty, what it might look like to talk with your faculty about the accommodations that you're going to use in their classroom, things like that. And then, like I said, during the sustain process, this is really where you're going to get ongoing communication from us, and where we can continue to field questions from you. If there's something that you are wanting to sort of work through, talk about, you want to go back and revisit your accommodations, something's not quite working, all of that can continue to happen in this sort of sustain phase of the process. And then just to give you sort of a view of the portal that I've been talking about, access.grinnell.edu, that connect with us form that I talked about is this button when you're on that page. There is a second row of icons when you're logged or when you access the page, but really for you as incoming students, that first row of icons is going to be what's going to be most helpful for you. The connect with us button you may use to once again get into that system when we get to the point where you're providing documentation or submitting a request form. You can do that securely through the provide documentation. That way your medical records and things aren't being sent via email. This is a more secure way to provide that to us directly. And then you can also use this portal to schedule an appointment with us, both for this summer and during your time at Grinnell. And I'm going to stop sharing my screen now so that we can go through questions that you may have or things that you want to talk about further related to some of the information that I shared. Jay, why don't we, before we dive into questions from the group, why don't you just do a quick introduction of yourself so that folks know who you are, especially since you probably have been talking with some of the folks that might be on this call.
Yeah, welcome. I am will do a lot of the primary work with reviewing documentation and going through and talking about what accommodations that you may need as you get started. I do look forward to meeting with all of you as we, get into the process and we start talking about what your needs may be, and as you transition from high school to college. Are there other things you'd like me to cover on?
No, I think now we can kind of open it up and see what questions folks have. We're happy to answer questions that you might have. We may have some students on the call. We may have family or parents or other forms of supporters who have questions, and we're happy to sort of take questions broadly from individuals and really kind of help. We have a small group, so we can really kind of help navigate what are the specific questions that you have at this point. And you can either unmute to ask a question or put it in the chat. Either one works just fine for us. We're monitoring both.
Autumn, are there any tips that you would give an incoming student in regards to kind of putting together paperwork or thinking through what their needs are from high school to this big transition? So are there any tips that you would recommend to start staggering knowing that they have 2 months to really plan for. So anything that you would consider, Jay, too? Anything?
Yeah, I think the biggest thing I would say is connect with us early. Connecting with us doesn't obligate you to use our services or require you to continue to work with us. But if you have questions, I really encourage folks to connect with us early. Some of the accommodations that are most helpful for individuals or that some individuals might be looking for related to scheduling of classes or related to the residence halls, some of those things are things that actually are have some upcoming deadlines. If you've gone through the new student checklist, you're going to be getting filling out some of the paperwork related to your tutorial, your required writing course. You're going to be getting ready to be placed in a residence hall room here coming up shortly, and so connecting with us before some of those deadlines can be really helpful for having the widest range of options that we can explore with you for accommodations. We can work with people after those things have happened. So after placements have happened, we still work with students who may be needing to request residential accommodations. But once everybody's been placed into a room, there become a lot less options that we can kind of work with in terms of what might be available for where we might place somebody. And so that might just mean that there's slightly less ideal ways that we meet access needs in terms of things. So yeah, connect with us early. Don't hesitate to reach out with questions. I think that would be one of my biggest sorts of pieces of advice. And then I think the other thing, and I'll let Jade chime in here as well, is, one of the conversations that I have with students a lot is around, and it's a really valid, I think, thought process and concern, who am I as I'm coming to Grinnell? Do I want to have accommodations? Do I want to connect with this office? And what I would say is, sometimes I'll connect with students who want to wait and see, what's my first semester like before you request accommodations? And that's a valid strategy. However, I think that if there's any sort of thought that you might want to use accommodations, I recommend actually doing the opposite. Let's try out the accommodations. Let's have them there as a safety net. Let's work through that process and have them available. And then you can choose whether or not to use them. But then we've already got everything already planned out. You have the supports that you need. And then we're not waiting for you to encounter a barrier before we've got some of those supports in place. Jay, I'll have you chime in, and then I see that we've got some questions starting to come in.
Yeah, I was going to, do you want me to try to take the first question?
Or do you have other advice that you would give?
That's great advice. I do encourage you to reach out early. The sooner the better as far as getting accommodations set up, particularly with some of the deadlines for residents and other areas for the most available options. Those are some things that we do want to start working with right away. And then as far as working, in fact, I do agree with you, Autumn. We do want to make sure that we try to get some of the accommodations set up, and then we'll work with you as you work to talk with your faculty about the accommodations. The cool part that we do have in our system is you're going to be involved in the process. You'll be the one who helps to connect and to send the accommodation letters out to your faculty, and we'll help do that as we get into the process. And I do agree with Autumn. We'll talk with you through what accommodations are appropriate, and then we'll help to set those up.
And so in terms of the question that you submitted, Larry, about will professors know about accommodations? So when we build that plan, when we build the accommodation plan in the accommodation portal, there will be a list of accommodations that you or your student are approved for. So for example, let's say I'm meeting with Jay. Jay is an incoming first year student, and Jay has been approved for a single in the residence hall, first floor, access to an elevator. Those are their residential accommodations. They're approved for some prepackaged meal items because of a severe allergy in the dining hall, and they're approved for extended time on exams, technology for note taking. I'm just sort of pulling some random accommodations out the hat, but they've got sort of these different things. Those will all be viewable by the student in the accommodation portal when they go in. And they'll have the option of picking which ones to send to which faculty of the academic ones. They'll be able to see their residential and dining. Those will never go to the faculty because they're things that is not relevant to the academic environment, and thus is information your faculty don't need to have access to. You can always share more with your individual faculty, your advisor, but we really will share the information that's pertinent to the specific environment that you're in. But the student will have an opportunity to say, I want my faculty for my tutorial class, which doesn't have exams. I want them to know about my extra time for reading in class. I want them to know about my ability to have a technology for note taking, but I don't want them to know that I also use exam accommodations because I've looked at the syllabus. I know that that's not relevant. Or some students will go the route of, I'm going to send all of my academic accommodations to my faculty, and we'll figure out together which ones apply to that class and things like that. So the professors will get a formal notification sent through our system. The student has control over when that notification goes out to their faculty. And then we really can help take over some of the pieces if there is any negotiating or figuring out the specifics for a particular class. That shouldn't have to fall on the student, but it is helpful to talk with the faculty about, okay, I have exam accommodations. Are there exams in your class? How might I, plan to do my extended time? What works best for sort of the structure? I have a class before, I have a class after. Where are we going to fit that in? Some of the logistics as opposed to the actual accommodation that's approved. So hopefully that helps answer your question, Larry, in terms of some of that.
For me, I always think about food. So living and food. So you mentioned food accommodations. Can you maybe describe maybe where in our dining hall where accommodations can be made and how that process actually works? So yeah, just a quick descriptor.
Yeah, and so in the what I've said already about dining accommodations, I've kind of referenced dietary restrictions or food allergies, things like that. Those are probably the most common reasons that we work with students for accommodations in the dining hall, but not the only. We have also worked with students if there is a mobility concern and might need assistance with being able to carry your tray, a variety of things like that, navigating the lines. We have also worked with students if there's sensory concerns or supports that might be needed in the dining hall because it is a large space with lots of people. In terms of food accommodations, so access to food that's going to be things that you or your student are able to eat. We work really closely with the dining services team. They have somebody on the team who's a dietitian who is often the contact that we work with in terms of making sure that not only are we meeting the food allergy needs, but that students have access to sort of a wide range of the food groups and nutritious food and things like that. And it really ends up looking very individualized for students. But in general, some of the broad pieces for students with severe food allergies, we have a couple of different options depending on what those food allergens are. So the dining hall already has some dedicated spaces. There's a gluten-free station. The food at that station will be food that is made without gluten-containing products. It is out, and so if cross-contamination is a concern, we may work with you in the dining hall to actually have food pre-plated in the back or available in a separate room, things like that. But if cross-contamination is not the concern, it's really the consuming of products with gluten, that station is a really great way to be able to grab and go food that's available already for anyone with a gluten sensitivity. There is a vegan station, which I know some of our students who have dairy allergies really like to use that because they, again, know that there's not going to be dairy or eggs in that station. And so there are some places where there's already food that's available that will meet particular dietary restrictions. If for some reason, whether that be the severity of the allergy or multiple allergies, multiple dietary restrictions, We will also work with students and have food items available for them. We have a room on the second floor of the dining hall that we worked with dining on, where they are able to put food for individuals who have significant dietary restrictions that's available for them, meets their dietary needs. There's a fridge, a hot box, a variety of different things in there where food can be stored. And we have a separate kitchen that we can that dining can prepare food that doesn't include any of the 9 major allergens. So they can prepare food in that kitchen that doesn't include, let's see if I can name all of them, tree nuts, peanuts, sesame, dairy, eggs, gluten, chocolate, alcohol. I'm forgetting a couple. Beef, I think, might be one of them. So, kind of working through some of those major allergens that people may be allergic to, and so everything prepared in that kitchen won't contain any of those allergens, which works well for some of our students who have multiple significant dietary restrictions.
And I think during orientation, you also help students show the dining hall and the stations too. Is that kind of also part of their transition process? Yeah.
Yes, yeah. So dining offers a couple different options. They'll do a one-on-one tour with individuals, but they also during the move-in process have and during orientation have some set times where they will do their sort of dietary tour. That's really great for individuals, both for seeing where those foods are, where things are stored, but also it's really great for actually being able to see where the food is prepped and ask questions, which can be really helpful for individuals who want to know things related to cross-contamination, like what are the protections that are in place for where the food is prepared, really seeing some of that behind the scenes space as well. And I see that there's a question about a health condition that requires small meals throughout the day. That is an accommodation that we can work with dining on. First year students are typically going to be on meal plan 1, which is already unlimited access or sort of open access to the dining hall. And so you'll be able to go in and out for those small meals the same as any other student. If as you progress through your time at Grinnell, you move off of meal plan 1, then we'll want to work closely with dining about what that looks like in terms of being able to eat small meals or have food to go or be able to sort of space out or package out some of your meals to be able to have access. But that is something that we can work with the dining hall and you to have available.
Do you want me to put the link to Net Nutrition in there?
You can, yeah. So Jay is going to be putting in a link. The dining hall also uses a software called Net Nutrition, which is really great, both really for anybody who's wanting to plan, and look at what are the menus, what might be food that I am wanting to eat. But Net Nutrition also allows people to filter out foods that they can't have. So you can say, don't show me anything on the menu that includes sesame. Don't show me anything on the menu that includes beef. And that can be a really great way to be able to look and see and plan before you get in and are trying to find which station might be best for you on that particular meal. You can kind of plan and know, oh, there's this food that I want that meets my dietary restrictions that's going to be at the grill. And then there's this food that's going to be at the salad bar. And, being able to kind of plan out what stations you want to go to for that specific meal.
I don't know if there's families here, parents or guardians, but what is one thing that you would recommend for families that how do you help support your student once they transition here as during the semester? Is there any kind of advice that you would give a family member?
Yeah, I think that in terms of advice for family members or support systems, really depends on the relationship that you and your student have in some ways. I think One thing that we do is that, particularly for these early conversations, if your student finds it helpful to have you present to sort of prompt questions or things like that, we are happy to have supporters join some of those early conversations. Sometimes that can be really helpful for thinking through what might be other areas of accommodation that are helpful. But I would actually encourage you, if you're a family member or a supporter, to talk with your student about how they want you involved in this process. Will they find your support really helpful? Do they want you to be involved if they encounter difficulty? Kind of talk through what does that look like for both the student and the parent, particularly if you went through the U.S. education system. That can be a pretty different transition for both of you, going from the K through 12 system to college, because the IEP and 504 process at the high school and K-12 level, really it happens once a year. It's I would say, very rigid in some ways. The student may or may not be involved depending on how the school and the family has organized things. And if that's the case for your family, if your student hasn't been involved in those conversations, this is a great time to be talking about what it was like to sort of go through that process of setting up accommodations in the K-12 system, making sure that they know what accommodations they were approved for, making sure that they know some of the things that have been support systems in place for them. And then really kind of working through some of that before you get here. I think that sometimes we see families where the parents really want to be much more heavily involved than their student wants them to be. We're going to defer to your student in terms of what they are comfortable having shared or not shared. We follow FERPA, so the Federal Educational Privacy Records Act. Records Privacy Act, flipped those two. And so really, we're going to take our cues from your student about when they want you involved, when they don't, in terms of their accommodation process and things like that. And so having some of those conversations earlier really sets you and your student up for success, and not being sort of surprised in terms of what that might look like and things like that. Anything you would add there, Jay?
No, I think you did a really good job of pulling in the conversations. And we really do. I really look at, see what the student is looking for, and they're going to be the ones who are going to be driving the communications. And so look forward to talking early.
Yeah. And we do have info out on our website on the Grinnell.edu. If you go to the accessibility disability resources, there is actually a handout about the transition from high school to college as it relates to accommodations, goes through what are the different laws, what are the different privacy sorts of pieces that are a change. And that can be a really helpful resource for students and for families to kind of understand what that landscape looks like. We do during new student orientation, our office will host a small breakfast that families and students are welcome to come to. It's a great way to meet the staff if you haven't seen us in person, if we've only interacted in this way. And we typically, the students will have an opportunity to meet with some of the returning students to talk about what is it like to talk to my faculty, what's it like to work through this process? What's it like being at Grinnell with accommodations? And parents have an opportunity to connect with our staff to sort of talk about, like, what does it look like now? You're leaving, you're leaving your student. What does that look like? What questions do you need answered about the ways that our support systems work, or the ways that we help connect students with other support systems on campus?
Okay, put the link in transition from high school to college on the side in the chat.
Perfect. There's also on that accessibility disability webpage, there's also some really great, they're a little bit older now. We're working on getting them updated with some more recent alumni, but there's some really great statements from from past grads and their families about some of what that transition has looked like. And those narratives from actual students, I think, can be really helpful as well in sort of thinking through what might be other questions that we want to be preparing for as we transition to Grinnell. The last thing that I would say, sort of on the like advice question, um, uh, you also, as a student, are able to be connected with our office without using accommodations. Every year, we work with students who identify as disabled, or as having a disability, who want to be connected so that they know information that's going out to other students with disabilities, so that they have they're aware of opportunities related to programs, events. Uh, Job openings, different things like that. And so you can connect with us, do that, connect with us. One of the options when you do that is, I just want to like be connected or know about resources in the future. You can also check and say, I want to be connected to programming, student orgs, things like that. So there's a number of different ways that you can use that connect with us form to indicate what it is that you're looking to get out of your relationship with our office at this time. That can obviously change. And then the other thing that I would say about that transition, because the IEP and 504 process really is a one-time a year meeting, something that sometimes catches students off guard, or they don't realize, is that if something isn't working here, we want to hear from you right away. We don't want you to have to wait a year to be able to make a change or to figure out how to address that barrier. And so if we put together your accommodation plan, you start your classes, and you're like, oh, there's something really big that we missed, or this isn't working, I need something else, come back and talk with us. Don't sort of wait. Don't feel like you don't have an opportunity to be able to explore. I would say the vast majority of students we work with, their accommodation plan changes at least once during their time at Grinnell, at least once. And that could be because something has changed with their diagnosis. That could be because they're taking a class that is completely different from other classes. If you have a class that involves travel, there might be a whole new set of accommodations or things that you're looking for or needing. And so it's not a sort of one and done conversation. You can certainly come back and chat with us at any time.
Okay. Any last questions? Feel free to put them in the chat. If not, thank you so much, Autumn and Jay, for your time, expertise, and supporting our incoming students. We really do appreciate it. And it's access@grinnell.edu, correct?
Yes.
Awesome. So if you have any
Access.
further questions, feel free to email the team at access.grinnell.edu for your specific questions. But again, we're so grateful for your expertise, your time, your knowledge, and your support of our students. So, and class of 2029, we look forward to meeting you in August. So thank you all so much.
Thanks, everyone.